The deep silence of space was interrupted only by the gentle hum of monitoring equipment aboard Oleron Station. Lieutenant Ziriskell stared at the readout for the fourth time that shift, finding nothing but the same emptiness that had greeted her for the past 6 months of her deployment. Bayari, 13, the forbidden zone that her team was tasked with monitoring, remained as still and lifeless as ever. "Another dull report to file," she muttered, leaning back in her chair and running her slender fingers through her short-cropped silver hair, a trademark of her Solitar heritage. Her reflective amber eyes blinked slowly as she stared at the vast emptiness on the screen. The station's doors slid open with a soft hiss. Commander Trenluer entered, his tall figure made more imposing by the precise angles of his military uniform and the rigid posture that had become second nature after decades in the Solitar Coalition forces. "Lieutenant Skell, status report?" His voice was as measured as always. "Nothing to report, Commander. Bayari, 13 remains empty, as it has since." She paused, then added with a hint of sarcasm, "Well, forever, apparently." Commander Luer's expression tightened. "Your skepticism is noted, Lieutenant, but unnecessary. The Forbidden Zones were established by the Grand Coalition Treaty for good reason." "And what reason would that be, Commander?" "I've read the official reports. They're vague at best. Strategic security concerns doesn't explain why we spend millions in resources watching empty space." Tren's features hardened. "It's not our place to question the decisions of the Coalition Council, Lieutenant. Our duty is to observe and report." "Yes, sir," Zira replied, turning back to her screens. But the question that had been nagging at her since her assignment to Oleron remained unanswered. What was so dangerous about Bayari, 13, that warranted such vigilance? The history spoke of a devastating war with the humans centuries ago, ending in their presumed extinction, or so the official records claimed. But why maintain such tight security around supposedly empty sectors? As Turin exited, Zira's gaze lingered on the vast expanse of Bayari, 13. The Forbidden Zone stretched across her screen, a dark canvas of stars and dust, silent and seemingly barren. Yet something about it called to her, like an unsolved puzzle demanding attention. The night shift dragged on, as uneventful as the hundreds before it. Zira was beginning her final system check when a small anomaly on her sensor panel caught her attention. A faint signal, barely registering on the equipment, blinked once, twice, then vanished. She straightened in her chair, tapping commands rapidly to recalibrate the sensors. "Computer, scan Quadrant 7B for signal patterns." After a brief pause, the system responded. No recognizable patterns detected. Frowning, Zira manually adjusted the detection parameters, enhancing sensitivity. Minutes passed as she meticulously fine-tuned the equipment. Then, just as she was about to concede defeat, it reappeared. A subtle fluctuation, 3 short pulses followed by a longer emission. Her heart raced. This wasn't random cosmic noise. The pattern was too structured, too intentional. More importantly, it didn't match any known Solidar or allied communication protocols. For nearly an hour, she tracked the intermittent signal, recording its patterns and trying to triangulate its source. It came from deep within Bayari, 13, far beyond the permitted scan range. Protocol dictated that she should report this immediately. But what if it was nothing? Her career couldn't afford another false alarm citation. By the time Commander Luer arrived for the morning briefing, Zira had compiled enough data to be certain. This was no glitch. "Commander, I've detected an anomalous signal emanating from within the Forbidden Zone," she reported, bringing up the visualization on the main screen. Turin's eyes narrowed as he studied the data. "It doesn't match any coalition signatures." "No, sir. And it's too structured to be natural." After a moment of tense silence, Turin accessed his command console. "This requires an advanced scan. Authorization, Luer, Commander T-7294. The station's more powerful, long-range scanners activated, probing deeper into Bayari 13. Connection established with Fleet Command," announced the computer. A A stern-faced admiral appeared on screen. Commander Lure, explain this breach of protocol. Advanced scanning of forbidden zones is... Admiral, Turin interrupted, we've detected an unidentified signal within Bayari 13. The signature doesn't match any known pattern. The Admiral's expression shifted subtly. Send the data immediately. And Commander, under no circumstances are you to enter the Forbidden Zone. Monitor only. Await further instructions. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving an uncomfortable silence in its wake. That seemed excessive, Zira commented. Turin's gaze remained fixed on the screen. If there truly is nothing in Bayari 13, why such an urgent response? Why explicitly forbid entry before we even suggested it? For the first time since Zira had known him, uncertainty crossed Commander Lure's face. Sir, she ventured, what if the forbidden zones aren't empty at all? What if they're hiding something? Turin didn't answer immediately, his disciplined mind visibly wrestling with questions that threatened the foundations of his beliefs. Finally, he turned to her. Continue monitoring. Record everything. But proceed with extreme caution, Lieutenant. We're treading on dangerous ground. As Zira returned to her station, a mixture of excitement and apprehension coursed through her. Whatever lay in Bayari 13, she was determined to uncover it, regardless of whether the Coalition wanted it found. Days passed without further instructions from Fleet Command, which felt increasingly like deliberate silence rather than administrative delay. The signal continued to appear irregularly, tantalizingly brief each time. They're stalling, Zira concluded after another fruitless communication attempt with headquarters. They're hoping we'll forget about it. Commander Lure, who had grown noticeably more contemplative since the discovery, surprised her with his response. We need more concrete evidence. Can we deploy a stealth probe? Zira's eyes widened. Sir, that would be a direct violation of... I'm aware of the regulations, Lieutenant, he interrupted sharply. But if Fleet Command is deliberately ignoring this, there's more happening than we understand. I'm not suggesting we enter the zone ourselves, merely that we gather better intelligence. Within hours, a small stealth probe, officially designated for routine maintenance checks in the legal skin area, was reprogrammed and deployed toward the signal source. It was a calculated risk. The probe's signature was minimal, easily dismissed as debris if detected. 48 hours later, the probe transmitted its first images back to Alleran Station. What they saw left them speechless. By the Founders, Zero whispered as the images clarified on screen. There, floating silently in the supposedly empty vastness of Bayari 13, was an enormous vessel unlike any in the Coalition's records. Its design was alien to Solitar aesthetics, more angular, utilitarian, built for function rather than form. Most striking were the markings along its hull, characters in an alphabet long thought lost to history. That's human writing, Turin said quietly, his voice tinged with disbelief. Latin script. Zira zoomed in on what appeared to be the vessel's designation, emblazoned on its forward section. The characters were weathered but unmistakable. UNSC Harbinger. A human warship, she breathed. But how? The historical records say they were eradicated. Historical records can be altered, Turin replied gravely. The question is, why has the ship been hidden from us? And why in a forbidden zone? The implications were staggering. If this vessel was indeed of human origin, then everything they had been taught about the fate of humanity might be a fabrication. More immediately concerning was what would happen when Fleet Command discovered they had deployed a probe into Bayari 13. The answer came more swiftly than anticipated. The station's communications system alerted them to an incoming priority transmission. Admiral Van's face appeared on screen, his expression thunderous. Commander Lure, you have directly violated Coalition directives by deploying technology into a forbidden zone. This constitutes a serious breach of security protocols. Admiral, we've discovered a vessel within Bayari 13, Turin responded, unflinching. A vessel of apparent human origin. There was no surprise on the Admiral's face, only cold calculation. That information is classified at the highest level. Your entire station is now under information lockdown. No communications in or out. A security detachment is en route to secure your findings. The transmission cut off abruptly. They knew. Zira realized aloud. They've always known it was there. Turin's expression had turned grim. Lieutenant, we have approximately 48 hours before the security detachment arrives. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now. Are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we find out the truth before it's buried forever. Turin's voice carried the weight of a decision that would likely end his career, if not worse. Prepare a scout vessel. Minimal crew. You'll lead. You're not coming? Zira asked, surprised. I need to remain here to ensure the station's logs are appropriately managed. We need to buy you as much time as possible. Within hours, Zira and a small team of 3 trusted crew members had boarded the station's scout vessel and set course for the Forbidden Zone. Crossing the boundary felt momentous, a line she had been trained never to cross. Now breached in pursuit of a truth too important to ignore. As they approached the human vessel, its immense scale became apparent. The Harbinger was a colossus, easily rivaling the largest Solitar dreadnoughts. Yet despite its size, it had somehow remained hidden in this supposedly empty region of space. Energy readings are unusual, reported Ensign Tavik, their systems specialist. The ship isn't dead as it appears. There's a power source still active, though at minimal levels. Life signs? Zira asked, her throat tight with anticipation. Inconclusive. There's too much interference. Tavik adjusted his instruments. Wait, I'm picking up something. It's faint, but it could be biological signatures. As they maneuvered closer to the enormous hull, details became clearer. The ship bore signs of severe battle damage, scorch marks from energy weapons, hull breaches that had been crudely repaired, and sections that appeared to have been rebuilt using materials not original to the vessel. It survived a battle, Zira murmured. A significant one. Their communications system suddenly crackled to life with a burst of distorted sound. The team froze, listening intently as fragments of speech emerged from the static. Words in an ancient language, structurally similar to the English that linguists still studied, but with differences that suggested evolution over time. They're trying to contact us. Varen, their communications officer, said in disbelief. Can you clean up? Translate. Zira asked. Working on it. The syntax is unfamiliar, but I think they're asking for identification. The implications were staggering. Something, was alive aboard that vessel. A vessel that, according to all official history, shouldn't exist. We need to board it, Zira decided. We may never get another chance. Lieutenant, that's beyond our mission parameters, objected Selin, the security officer. Commander Lure authorized reconnaissance only. And what we've reconnoitered changes everything, Zira countered. If there are survivors aboard, actual humans, this rewrites our entire understanding of galactic history. We can't turn back now. After tense deliberation, the team agreed to a brief boarding mission. They would dock at a breach point, investigate what they could in 2 hours, and return before the security detachment could reach Alleran Station. The approach to the Harbinger was nerve-wracking. Docking systems were incompatible, forcing them to use magnetic clamps to secure their vessel near a hull breach that appeared stable enough to serve as an entry point. Suited in full environmental gear, weapons ready but set to non-lethal, the 4 Solidar officers entered the human ship. The immediate interior was dark, illuminated only by their helmet lights and the occasional red glow of emergency lighting that had somehow maintained power over the centuries. The corridors were massive compared to Solitar designs, testament to the physical differences between the species. Debris floated in the low gravity, fragments of equipment, personal items, and disturbing evidence of past violence. Impact marks from projectile weapons, carbon scoring from energy discharges. There was fighting inside the ship, Selin noted grimly. Internal conflict? Or borders? They moved deeper, following the intermittent power signatures toward what their scans suggested was a central section of the ship. Everywhere were signs of humanity, text warnings on walls, image displays showing faces with diverse features, artifacts of civilization supposedly erased from existence. "Look at this," Tavik called, pointing to a fallen weapon. Its design was unfamiliar, clearly built for hands larger than theirs, its mechanism more primitive than Solitar technology, but ingenious in its own way. "These people fought hard," Zira observed, examining gouges in the metal walls. Whatever happened here wasn't a simple defeat. Their path eventually led them to a sealed doorway, marked with symbols that Varen translated as Cryo Storage Alpha. Beyond it, their scanners detected the faint biological signatures they had picked up earlier. "This could be it," Zira said, her voice tight with anticipation. "If humans survived, this is how they would have done it." Cryogenic suspension. Bypassing the ancient security system took Tavik nearly 30 minutes. But eventually, the massive door slid open with a groan of protesting metal. The chamber beyond was vast, containing rows of what appeared to be sleep pods, most dark and clearly non-functional. But in the center, a cluster of pods still glowed with faint blue light, their systems operational. "They're alive," Tavik whispered, checking his readings. At least one pod contains a viable life form in suspended animation. Near the active pods stood a command console, its screens flickering with power. Tavik approached it cautiously, studying the interface. "This is running on an AI system, primitive by our standards, but impressive for its age. I might be able to access the ship's logs." While Tavik worked, Zira moved closer to the active cryopod. Through a frost-coated viewport, she could make out the shadowy form of its occupant. Unmistakably human from the anatomical study she had seen, but impossible to discern features or condition. "I've got something," Tavik called. "Ship's log entries dating back. Founders preserve us. Over 200 years. The team gathered around the console as Tavik managed to activate a playback. The screen flickered, then displayed the image of a human male, wearing what appeared to be a military uniform. His face was haggard, his eyes reflecting exhaustion and desperation. Final log entry. Captain Mikhail Kazansky, UNSC Harbinger, the figure began. "We've sustained critical damage escaping the ambush at Proxima Centauri. The Solitar Coalition forces, along with their Vexery allies, broke the ceasefire without warning or provocation. The Treaty of Mutual Limitation was nothing but a ploy to make us vulnerable." Zira felt her blood run cold. This contradicted everything in the official historical record. The captain continued, his voice growing more strained. "Earth has fallen. The colonies are under siege or destroyed. The Harbinger may be among the last surviving human military vessels. We're attempting to reach the emergency rendezvous point, but system failures make success unlikely. I've ordered all non-essential personnel into cryostasis to conserve resources. If rescue doesn't come, at least some might survive as witnesses to what really happened here." He leaned closer to the recording device, his expression hardening. "Let the record show that humanity did not provoke this war. We honored the treaty terms. The Salator-led coalition attacked, while our defenses were down, according to the phase-out schedule we had mutually agreed upon. This wasn't a fair fight. It was a calculated extermination." The recording ended, leaving the Solitar team in stunned silence. "This can't be right," Selen finally said. "Our historical archives clearly state that humans violated the treaty, developing forbidden weapons technologies. They were the aggressors. History is written by the victors," Zira replied grimly. "If what this captain says is true, then our entire understanding of the human Salator War is based on lies." Their debate was interrupted by an alarm from their scout vessel. "Proximity alert," Varen reported, checking her communicator. "Something's happening back at the Harbinger's power core. Energy levels are spiking dramatically." As if in response, the ship around them shuddered, and systems that had lain dormant for centuries began to activate. Lights brightened, and a mechanical voice echoed through the chamber in the human language. "Emergency protocols initiated. Security breach detected. Automated defense systems engaging." "We need to leave," Selen urged. Now, but Zira's attention was fixed on the cryopod, where indicators had switched from blue to amber. The awakening sequence has started, she realized. Our presence must have triggered it. Lieutenant, we don't have time. Selen insisted, already moving toward the exit. Torn between the unprecedented opportunity to witness a human awakening and the clear danger of their situation, Zira made her decision. Tavik, download as much data as you can. Everyone else, back to the ship. We need to report what we've found before the security detachment arrives. As they rushed back through the corridors, the Harbinger continued to awaken around them, systems powering up with increasing intensity. By the time they reached their docking point, the ship was broadcasting a powerful signal across multiple frequencies, a beacon that would be impossible for any nearby vessels to miss. The signal's encryption is complex, Varen reported as they detached from the Harbinger. But it's definitely a distress call, and it's being transmitted on frequencies that haven't been used in centuries. Who is it calling to? Zira wondered aloud. The answer came sooner than any of them could have anticipated. As they accelerated away from the Harbinger, their sensors detected a new alert from Alleran Station. Commander Lure's voice came through, tense and urgent. Lieutenant, return immediately. Fleet Command has dispatched an assault detachment to Bayari 13. They're no longer attempting to hide the situation. They're moving to neutralize the human vessel. The journey back to Alleran Station was fraught with tension. Before they could even dock, a massive Solitar warship dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the station. The Vigilant, a Devastator-class cruiser, its weapons systems already powering up. Commander Lure was waiting when they boarded, his expression grave. The situation has escalated beyond anything I anticipated. Admiral Van has ordered the immediate destruction of the human vessel. Sir, we can't allow that, Zira protested. There's at least one living human in cryostasis aboard that ship, and the historical records. I know, Turn interrupted. Tavik transmitted some of the data during your return. It's difficult to reconcile with everything we've been taught. It's more than difficult, Zira insisted. If these logs are authentic, it means our ancestors committed atrocities and then falsified history to cover their actions. Before the commander could respond, the station's alert system blared. Multiple vessels detected exiting FDL at the edge of Bayari 13, announced the automated system. On the main screen, they watched as a Solitar assault team deployed from the Vigilant toward the Harbinger. But before they could reach it, space seemed to ripple and tear, a phenomenon associated with non-standard FTL technology. What is that? Turin demanded, just as a cluster of sleek, unfamiliar vessels materialized between the Vigilant and the Harbinger. Human ships, Zira whispered in awe. They came for their people. The newcomers were obviously military vessels, their design sharing elements with the Harbinger, but clearly more advanced, evolved over centuries of development. Their arrival created immediate chaos in the Solitar command structure. Admiral Van's face appeared on the station's communication screen. Alleran Station, be advised, you are witnessing a classified security operation. Maintain your position and prepare to receive Special Forces personnel. But the Admiral's composure was visibly shaken as another transmission cut across all channels. This one from the lead vessel of the new arrivals. Solitar vessels. This is Admiral Helena Kazansky of the Human Remnant Defense Force. The ship you are targeting is under our protection. Any hostile action will be met with immediate and proportional response. We have not come seeking conflict, but we will defend our history and our people. The name was not lost on Zira. Kazansky, like the captain in the log. What followed was a tense standoff. The Solitar assault team halted their approach, caught between their orders and the unexpected presence of a clearly advanced human battle group. The Vigilant's weapons remained powered, but did not fire. They don't want to start a war, Turn observed. Neither side does. Within the hour, Alleran Station became an impromptu neutral ground for the most extraordinary diplomatic engagement in recent history. Admiral Van arrived personally, accompanied by a cadre of senior Solitar officials who appeared nervous rather than authoritative. The human delegation was led by Admiral Kazansky herself, a tall woman whose bearing suggested not just military discipline, but the weight of preserving a culture that had nearly been annihilated. My great-grandfather commanded the Harbinger, she explained during the initial meeting. His crew were among the few who escaped the systematic destruction of human worlds. While your histories claim we violated treaty terms by developing prohibited technologies, the truth is quite different. She activated a holographic display, showing ancient documents with signatures from both human and Solitar representatives. The Treaty of Mutual Limitation was a peace agreement meant to de-escalate the arms race between our peoples. We complied with the phased disarmament schedule, and while we were deactivating our defensive systems according to that schedule, the Solitar Coalition launched a coordinated attack across all major human settlements. Admiral Ven's face had grown progressively paler. These accusations are baseless. Our historical records clearly indicate. Your historical records were falsified, interrupted a new voice. All heads turned to see a figure standing at the entrance to the conference room. A human male, thin and pale, supported by medical staff from the human delegation. Despite his apparent weakness, his voice carried authority. Captain Mikhail Kazansky, UNSC Harbinger, he introduced himself. Recently awakened after 2 centuries in cryo-sleep, and apparently just in time. The room fell silent. Here stood living proof, a direct witness to events that had been sanitized from official history. I was there when the Grand Admiral of the Solitar Fleet invited us to discuss minor treaty adjustments, only to open fire on our diplomatic vessels, Kazansky continued. I watched Earth burn from orbit as we fled with what survivors we could carry, and I recorded every moment, every transmission, every piece of evidence that would tell the true story, if anyone remained to hear it. He approached the table, moving stiffly but with determination. The Harbinger was our message in a bottle, placed in what we knew would become a restricted zone, because the Solitar leadership would want to hide the evidence of their treachery. We gambled that someday, someone with conscience would find it. His gaze fell on Zira and her team. It seems our gamble paid off. The revelations triggered a political earthquake throughout the Solitar coalition. As evidence from the Harbinger's databanks was independently verified, the carefully constructed historical narrative began to unravel. Emergency sessions of the Coalition Council were convened. Military commanders were questioned. Ancient records, supposedly lost or destroyed, mysteriously resurfaced from protected archives. For Zira and Turin, the following weeks were chaotic. They were alternately treated as heroes and traitors, depending on which faction of the rapidly fracturing Solitar political establishment they dealt with. Hardliners demanded their imprisonment for breaching the Forbidden Zone. Reformists sought their testimony to support investigations. Throughout it all, the human ships maintained their position around the Harbinger, neither retreating nor advancing, but making it clear that they would not allow the evidence of history to be destroyed. It took nearly a month of frantic diplomacy before the Bayari Accord was drafted, a framework for addressing historical injustices and establishing new relationships between the human remnant and the Solitar Coalition. Under its terms, the Forbidden Zone designations would be reviewed and mostly rescinded, allowing free travel and honest historical examination. The day the accord was signed, Zira stood with Commander Turin on Alleran Station's observation deck, watching as the Harbinger, now partially repaired with the help of the human remnant fleet, prepared to depart. "What will you do now?" she asked her former commander, who had resigned his commission in protest over the coalition's initial attempts to suppress the discoveries. "I've accepted a position as military liaison to the Joint Historical Commission," Turin replied. "It seems appropriate, given my part in all this." "And you?" Zira gazed out at the stars, seeing them with new eyes, no longer divided into permitted and forbidden zones, but full of possibilities. "Admiral Kazansky has offered me a diplomatic role. The human remnant needs representatives who understand Solitar culture, but aren't bound by old prejudices. It's a chance to build something new." As they watched, the Harbinger's engines flared to life. Ancient technology assisted by modern enhancements from the human remnant fleet. The vessel that had drifted silently for centuries, bearing witness to a hidden history, was returning to service as a symbol of resilience and reconciliation. Not everyone welcomed the new era, of course. Extremist factions within the Solitar coalition had already published manifestos denouncing the Bayari Accord as surrender. Rumors persisted of military commanders who refused to acknowledge the revised history. And questions remained about other species who might have suffered similar fates, their stories likewise buried in forbidden zones across the galaxy. Do you think we'll ever know the full truth? Zira asked. Turin considered the question carefully. Perhaps not. 2 centuries of deception leaves deep wounds and tangled lies. But we've made a start. Beyond Oleron Station, now being repurposed as a diplomatic outpost rather than a military watchtower, the human remnant vessels formed an honor guard around the departing Harbinger. Alongside them flew a contingent of Solitar ships, not as adversaries, but as escorts in a symbolic gesture of the new accord. A year ago, I never would have imagined this, Zira said, gesturing toward the unprecedented formation. A year ago, we thought we knew our history, Turin replied. Now we know enough to question it. As the ships accelerated away, Zira reflected on how a single anomalous signal had cascaded into a revelation that was reshaping the political landscape of known space. The path ahead would not be easy. Centuries of propaganda and prejudice would not disappear overnight. New conflicts might arise as old ones were resolved. But the truth had emerged from its forbidden prison, and that alone was worth celebrating. The human ship that had appeared in a forbidden zone, silent witness to a history almost erased, had become the catalyst for an uncertain but hopeful future. Whatever comes next, Zira said, at least it will be built on truth rather than lies. And that's a foundation worth having.